Welcome to another episode of Breaking into Cybersecurity, where we talk to cybersecurity professionals about what got them interested into tech and cyber to begin with, how they grew in their career, and then what challenges you're facing today. Today, we have Justin Collins on with us today. Justin, tell us a little bit about your career and what really got you interested in tech and cyber to begin with.
Thanks, Christoph. Really happy to be here, happy to share. Um, I was one of those kids that got into computers pretty early, probably around 11, 12. Uh, Taught myself programming, got really interested in it, and ended up going to college for computer science. And then kept going to graduate school again for computer science. I was very into programming languages. I thought that's what I wanted to do. Um, and in the middle of my PhD, my advisor told me, hey, I'm running out of funding, so you need to go get an internship, go get a job, essentially. So again, at the time, I was very into programming. I was very into the Ruby programming language. So I looked for the local companies. This was in Los Angeles. I looked for the local companies that were doing Ruby at the time, AT&T Interactive or yellowpages.com. They were kind of big in the Ruby community. They sponsored a lot of conferences. I saw their name, their logo on videos. So I applied to all of their internships. And the team that called me was the security team. So prior to that, I didn't have any security experience, any particular interest in security. But I got the call from that team. Um, and interestingly enough, did a phone screen first. And in the phone screen, they said, hey, we're going to have you come in for an interview. Uh, Look up, and I think they said SQL injection and cross-site scripting, which were two terms I'd never heard before. So, I was in school. I was used to being told to go study things. So I looked them up, some Wikipedia, maybe some OWASP resources. I don't quite remember. And I went in, did the interview, got the role, the internship role. And I found out later, I was one of the only people that, they told me what was going to be on the test, right? They said, we're going to ask you about these topics. I looked them up and studied them, and most of the candidates didn't. So that's really what got me started in the security space. Um, I had a great manager there. His name is Tim Zaw. And while I was there, I started working on a static analysis tool, again, pulling in, I wanted to do programming languages, so I'd taken compilers courses, I'd taken static analysis courses, and I thought, well, maybe I can apply this to the security space and program analysis, especially on Ruby and Rails. And so from there, create a project, it's called Breakman, open sourced it at the end of the internship, and things kind of went from there. That ended up turning into a very small company. It ended up getting acquired, and really it led to all of the opportunities that I ended up having after that. So that was really the beginning, and really kicked off my experience in the security industry.
So, going from an internship to creating your own company, whether it was a small company or not, that must have been a big change. So what was your role in the company? Were you leading it as the CEO, bootstrapping, doing everything, or what roles did you play in that startup at the time?
Yeah, and I do want to emphasize this was the tiniest company you can imagine. All of us were still working real jobs at the time. So I had two co-founders, Jim Manico and Neil Matatal. We came together. We were working on this as kind of like a side thing, I guess you would say. I was doing, the CEO role, the marketing role, the sales role, a little bit of the development role. Neil was really taking on, he built out our desktop app at the time. We thought that was going to be what people wanted, was a desktop interface into the tool. And then Jim was helping again with like marketing and sales and really a lot of advising on the business side and how to build a security business. But again, this was tiny. We're all working regular jobs. I was fortunate enough. I got a part-time job in a security role, which is pretty unusual, I would say. But I was able to negotiate that and have a job that was, supporting the family, but I could work part-time on the side business. And fortunately, that got acquired by a company called Synopsys, which has now spun that division off or sold it off, and now it's called Black Duck. So yeah, it was very interesting. I learned a lot from kind of running a business. I mean, we had some customers and things, but it's not really what you think of as a startup with, hey, we got VC funding and we've got, I don't know, a little office somewhere and we're all working together. It was really a side thing that at some point and I know this is much more about cybersecurity careers, but I just realized that if we wanted to grow it into a real business,
Mhm.
it would require money. It would require
Yeah.
a lot more time, a lot more expansion. And I have maybe some hot takes about static analysis security tools, but the reality is you have to expand to cover as many languages and frameworks and libraries as you possibly can. And I just didn't
Mhm.
really have a drive to do that. So
Mm.
again, we were fortunate enough to be acquired by Synopsys. Um, and kind of transition out of trying to run a business and trying to grow a business. But it was very interesting. I learned a lot. I learned a lot, mainly of things not to do, but some things that I wish I had done, like hiring a salesperson. I would probably say uh, the three main lessons I learned was don't spend too much on lawyers, which nowadays you don't need to anyway. It's all, you can just, there's services that will just do everything for you. Hire a salesperson and hire a UX person, which we did do that. We had a
Mhm.
UX person join the team. Those three things, I think, if I had known them up front, might have helped us be more successful a little bit faster.
Makes sense, makes sense. Uh, and I agree with you. Like, while this is a cybersecurity focused podcast, I think what makes all of the stories great are all of the transferable skills and competencies that folks like yourself bring in from their diverse set of experiences along the way and bring into the field that they can share with other folks, and how they can take those different sets of experiences and apply those to their career. And I think that's what helps us become more resilient as a field today.
Uh, Absolutely, absolutely. I was fortunate enough that after, let's see, after selling that business, I worked at Synopsys for about a year. And then I had an opportunity to join Gusto, which is a payroll company. And I ended up staying there 6.5 years, actually the longest I've ever stayed at one job, just
Mhm.
coincidentally. And I was also fortunate enough in that role, I moved into a management role, and that role kept growing until the last year that I was there. I was actually in the CISO role. And, looking back on that, one of the things that was really, I guess, I'm proud of and I'm happy to be that I was able to be a part of, was hiring people. And thinking of the team there, which by the time I left was about 45 people, a lot of folks were not coming in with security background, right? Or previous security roles, or maybe they had one role before. And it's absolutely, it's a an industry you can get into as long as you are interested and you have the desire to be a part of it, and you don't have to be coming in with previous knowledge of security. I didn't, right? I started with an internship, and I learned as I went, and which, there's good and bad to that, of course. I didn't have previous managerial experience before I was a manager, and I was offered, that opportunity. And being in a CISO role again, and maybe some people, you know, notice that I didn't have experience doing that, but you do have to start somewhere.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, bringing in one of the, again, one of the kind of joys, I guess, of being in that kind of role, and you do have to find the good parts, is bringing in people who are just excited to join the industry, to excited to be in that kind of role, and they are coming from different backgrounds. We had a lot of people on the team that were coming from different backgrounds, and as you said, that makes you more resilient, right? That gives you more perspectives. That gives you people who are going to look at things a different way, or look at things and like, well, I, you know, instead of saying like, well, you know, I know the framework for this, and I know these are the things I'm supposed to do, or the things I'm supposed to look at. But they can look at it fresh and like, oh, what is that thing over there, right? What is, you know, why does it work that way? And again, you're trying to build a resilient security organization to defend your company. You want that kind of input.
And I think what's important is leaders like yourself that are willing to give those that opportunity, because I think today you often see with the use of AI, with the use of screening technologies, where on the front end of that, on the UI end of that, um, they might submit. You might get a lot of applicants, but in the filtering process, a lot might get screened out for not having exactly those traits. So having a leader like yourself be open to individuals like that is a critical skill or desire that I see to have in leadership, to be open to seeing how they could take those skills and competencies from other fields and bring them into cybersecurity.
Yeah, absolutely. A number of folks that we hired may not have had a security job before, but they would say, "Oh, you know, I built a thing, or I participated in something, and I really enjoyed it." And you could kind of get a sense from that they will dig into things, right? They will figure it
Mhm.
out, and maybe they already have that mindset of how do I make something secure? How do I protect something? And that's, you know, that's an excellent starting point. Of course, I'm biased. You know, I started with an internship, but if you can find the, again, if you're kind of at that student level, right?
Mhm.
Um, it can be challenging. I will say, you know, just thinking about, especially at Gusto, it was their internship program was focused on software developers. But once you were in, then, you know, you would see, oh, there's actually an opportunity on the security team, right? And we had
Mhm.
excellent people come through. Again, these are students. They're not coming. Maybe we had one that had a secure, you know, some kind of security classes that they had taken or something. But generally, it's just, you know, maybe computer science students, and we get them onto the security team, and then we get them interested in security, and then they go from there, right? They can decide to have a career in security. So it can be hard to find those opportunities, maybe if you're specifically looking for them, but they are out there. And I guess maybe the other side of that, as you said, if you're a security leader, try to open up an internship program, right? Try to get those students in, because a lot of times they're going to come in with a lot of energy, right? You know, they're
Yeah.
young, they're at the beginning of their careers, they're coming in with a lot of energy, and if you can turn that energy into an interest in security, um, one, it's super beneficial for them, even if they don't do security, right? Even if they go into a software development job and go, oh yeah, I did that internship on the security team. I have an
Mhm.
understanding of security and what those teams are looking for. That can be great. Maybe they turn it into a career, like I happen to. Um, so yeah, I agree. Offering those opportunities, again, if you're on the searching side, it can be really challenging to find. But if you're on the security leadership side, or if you're just on a security team, yeah, try to push for getting those interns, right? Getting the those new folks onto the team.
And for those in the middle of their career, or for example, yourself, as you say, transitioned out of your CISO role into your next opportunity, um, what were some of the things that you did to make that transition, and how did you overcome some of those challenges in today's job search? Because today's job search looks quite a bit different than it did, say, 5 years ago.
Sure. Well, I think maybe the tricky thing for me is after that internship, I built something that ended up being relatively visible. And I participate a lot. Again, going back to that internship, right after that, I went back to work full time at AT&T, pretty much full time. I was still doing my PhD,
Mhm,
um, but I went back to a full time role. And my manager there again encouraged me. He said, "Hey, you should, let's submit a talk to a conference." And at the time, I'd done academic talks and academic
mhm.
conferences. I didn't know that industry conferences were a thing. I didn't know anything about it. We say, yeah, we should submit a talk. And so
Like
we did.
B-sides.
Well, this ended up, I think this was AppSec USA.
Okay, okay.
Uh, so we did, and maybe stepping back a little bit, um, I got a lot of support in going from the internship onwards from both the LA OWASP chapter and the LA Ruby meetup, both of
Mhm.
which I was able to go and talk about what I had built, talk about security, and really got a lot of encouragement there. And those were kind of small groups, right? And so you end up building relationships, you end up meeting people. We went, Tin and I went to um, AppSec USA. We gave a talk. I met other folks there, and one of those folks, his name was Alex Smolin. He was working at Twitter, and he said, "Hey, you should stop by Twitter sometime," which I didn't know at the time was actually his code for, "Hey, come interview at Twitter." Um, I figured that out later. And so I did, right? And I got a job at Twitter. From Twitter, I was looking for, I, I was looking to start that business and was a little bit unsure of like intellectual property things and such with like working at Twitter and starting a business. And that's how I found a part-time role at SurveyMonkey. And why I'm mentioning this is, and I know this is going to sound very privileged, let's say, but I haven't applied to a job since the internship. And that's because I was participating in the community, right? I was meeting people. I had, again, a pretty visible project that at the time people were very interested in and interested in bringing in my expertise. And so, really, one, I can't offer a lot of advice, but two, it's about building up that community and building up uh, uh, what Gene Kim calls your tribe, right? So
Mhm,
having connections, having relationships, which in the current age, especially let's say like the Gen Z folks, with you know growing up with COVID and screens and not having those like in-person connections, it can be challenging. And that's what kind of what you have to do. You have to go out and say, all right, like what's the meetup, right? What's the OWASP group or the developer meetup? Where can I be involved? And you'll find once you do that and once you start meeting people, then the opportunities come out. You say, hey, I'm looking for a role, right? What's out there? Are you hiring? Do you have any internship roles? Um, that can be, that can be a way of getting in. And you asked about the current role. That's exactly what it was. I wanted to get out of the CISO role. I've done it. I don't know that I would do it again. and and so I contacted people that I knew, right? People that I thought I would like to work with, and really returning to the tool side of building something versus being on an internal team, which I know you've
Hmm.
talked to a lot of folks. I think this is pretty common in security, that you kind of swing between internal security teams and being on a
Hmm.
vendor or a contracting side. So I'm on that pendulum, right? But I wanted to answer the other part of your question too, because again, at Gusto, I was in a management role for basically like 6 years, the time that most of the time that I was there. And one of the things that I found for myself, as well as the people, I was involved in promoting people, actually
Hmm.
promoted quite a few people. I mean, they earned it, and I was able to be part of the process of, promotions at Gusto. And the things that stand out to me, and the advice that I've given to folks is first do your current job as well as you possibly can. Because when people see that you do a really good job at your role, they're so much more willing to give you other opportunities. Like, well, you're killing it, with what you're doing right now. If I give you more responsibility, you're probably going to kill that too. You're probably going to be great. And building from there, right? So, that's kind of my number one piece of advice with folks who are looking to progress is first just nail what you're doing right now, right? Now, not every role and company is going to recognize that and give you opportunities, but um, the people around you, again, if you're kind of building up that community, um, they will see that, right? And those opportunities, sometimes you have to push for them. Again, I feel very fortunate and very lucky that things have come up for me and that people have been, interested in working with me or doing, things with me. But first, it's building the connections, right? And having that community around you and having people go, oh yeah, like I know this person does great work, right? Or they give great presentations at least, right? They give good talks. It's interesting. I can tell that they have an expertise, or at least they're willing to learn and share. And then uh, those are the folks that again it's easier to hire. In fact, just one more anecdote, right? I know you mentioned things have changed in the hiring landscape, which is certainly true. The job market's tough right now. But a few years ago, it was the opposite. It was very hard to hire people. Everyone was very happy. They were getting paid a lot. It was very hard to find people. And I'll tell you, one of the things that I did, I went and looked at conference talks. Who's giving talks, right? Who's out there and visible? I can watch their talk, right? That gives me a sense of who they are, how they communicate. I can see their background, right? And then I hit them up on LinkedIn and say like, hey, are you looking for a job? I have this role available. I did that quite a bit early. Again, this was a while back when it was hard to
Hmm.
find people to hire, but that just shows you, right? I was looking for who's out there, right? Who's
Hmm.
giving talks, who's part of a community, because that's who I want to bring in.
I think one thing that maybe you overlooked, but maybe you took for granted, while you built up your tribe, you also built a product, and that product has a substantial reputation. Maybe that's a lot of GitHub repositories, a lot of open source applications that you've provided to the community, and that provides to the community a repertoire of your experience over the years that shows that you're more than just talk. And I think for some, that are newer to the community, that's one way to start to build up your experience, is to demonstrate, yes, you've been tinkering with things. Yes, you've been creating things. Yes, you know how to do things. And like you said, you were working in the community and you built a pretty visible application. Um, if you give back to the community and if you provide feedback or um, commentary to bug challenge it, to bugs or PRs in um, open source repos, on GitHub, then the community starts to see you and starts to recognize who you are. And that could also provide opportunities for them to reach out to you and maybe invite you for a conversation.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And it's not even necessarily you have to go and um, you know build out a whole product or a whole big project, um, but just being if you see a gap somewhere, right? Or maybe you're investigating using some tool or some library, and you go through that experience of like, well, I had to kind of figure out how to set it up, and I had to figure out how to use it and how to interpret the results, and maybe I started automating it or something like that. Turning that into even something that's like, well, here's a blog post and a
Hmm.
guide on how to use this, right? Or here's just documentation.
Hmm. A
Then
Medium
you can,
article. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And if you kind of keep going in that direction, what happened for me, right, is people started saying, "Oh, well, Justin, you're an expert in Ruby on Rails security." And I'm like, well, I don't know that I'm an expert, but I've done a lot of investigation, and I've incorporated what I learned into a tool, and I've kind of gone from there. And so, yes, if you can find that thing that you're interested in and that gap where it's like, well, look, wow, no one's written up this documentation, or it doesn't seem like anyone's digging into this. Um, Let me dig into that, and then let me share back what I found, and let me build on that. I absolutely agree. That's a way of building up a profile, showing expertise, showing people you can learn, you can grow, you can communicate. And yeah, if you, and I'm sure this has happened many times, where you're like, well, I'm at a company and we use that technology. And look, you obviously know this technology because you've been writing about it, you've been experimenting with it, you've been using it or contributing to it. They're going to want to talk to you, or they're at least going to be more inclined to talk to you
Yeah.
if you've demonstrated that. So yeah, that's absolutely true. There was a gentleman, and I'm sorry I can't remember his name, but I remember talking to a while back. This was actually quite a while back, and he kind of asked similar questions. I said, well, I started an open source project, right? Like that's how I got my foot in the door. And he said, oh, okay, well, I've kind of been working on something, and I saw him giving a talk at I think it was B-Sides SF, like a year or so after that, on the thing that he had built out, right? And it was open source, and he built on top of the project. And it's very cool, right? And I don't know what he's doing now. I hope he's doing great. But yeah, that can absolutely be a way in. And not just that, right? Because I think it's not just about like a career, right? It's about, well, I've built expertise in something and I've
Hmm.
learned something, and you can build on top of that and you can expand that, right? Assuming you're interested and you enjoy it and you want
Yeah.
to keep doing it, then yeah, that becomes your foundation, right? For me, most of that was web application security, and I feel like I know that pretty well. But there are lots of areas of security I don't know very well. Um, Although I had to learn a lot more in the CISO role, and I was grateful to folks on the team who did have that expertise and helped me learn. But yeah, I mean, it's a foundation, and you can keep going on that, and you can keep building on that. And then, yeah, it turns into opportunities.
So speaking of that, any interesting challenge areas that you're working on today that you want to mention that you're working on, and potentially areas that folks might want to consider as they enter the industry if they're on the software development side like yourself?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I was in the CISO role at Gusto. Decided it was time to move on, and really wanted to return back to building tools, code analysis. So I joined this company, Dry Run Security, which is building out essentially AI-powered code review, security code review. And Um, Prior to joining, I mean, Gusto is a big AI adopter, really pushing it, but I hadn't touched it like in depth. And what I've really been finding is, obviously people see a lot of stuff in the news. The
Hmm.
Anthropic likes to, manipulate the stock market with dropping bombs on everyone in cybersecurity. But reality is, you can't just say AI, make this thing secure, right? Or AI, tell me where all the vulnerabilities are. It really takes a lot of orchestration. It takes a lot of injection of knowledge. One of the cool things I think about Dry Run is it's founded by AppSec folks who have a lot of knowledge. They have a lot of experience with code review, and building that into a product is very interesting. It's interesting to learn things like Pete on the team was telling me like, hey, did you know like if you ask for a conclusion and then reasoning that the AI or LLMs, we're only talking about LLMs, right?
Hmm.
The LLM will justify its reason, like regardless, like first it'll like come up or sorry, justify its decision. So if you're like, give me a yes, no, and then why, first it'll be like yes, and then it will come up for a reason why it said yes, which is not at all
Yes.
what you want, right? You want
Yes,
give me,
exactly.
reason through it and then give me your conclusion based on that reasoning. I don't know. This is stuff, everyone's learning at the same time. The downside is it's a bit of a, there's a lot of pressure, right? It's like AI everything. Um, and there's a new tool every day. There's thousands of new models every day, most of which are, useless and worthless. But things are changing really, really rapidly. It's very hard to stay on top of. And so I think you have to take a step back and say, like, what are the things that I really care about, and the things that I need to know, maybe to do my job or to make progress, and learn those. The reality is, despite what people say on LinkedIn or wherever, no one's on top of everything, right? No one knows everything. No one's on the cutting edge of everything. So, do what you can to keep learning, to keep expanding. In my case, again, I'm really excited to be back to AppSec and be back to building tools. And AI is just another technology that we're using to try to secure things, um, and try to help people build secure products. Which in the end, it's not about selling things, right? It's about people's everyday lives. They're using these products, they're running their businesses on these products, and we want them to be as secure as possible to protect people, to protect businesses. And so, yeah, again, excited to be back on the tool side. I'm sure at some point I'll, I'll be like, I wonder what security teams are doing, and I'll go back the other way. That's absolutely what happened to me at Synopsis, where I was like, gosh, I feel like and it was only a year. I was like, I feel like I'm losing touch with what security teams are up to and the challenges that they're facing. I'll probably be doing tools for longer than a year this time, but um, yeah, the other part of your question, you asked about some of the challenges that people are facing generally, and honestly, I'm kind of glad to be on the tool side, because security teams now, it's so challenging with the amount of tools that people are trying to bring into their businesses, the number of people who are like, well, I can write code now, like I can build things and I can ship things, which from a big picture, it's like, well, that's cool, right? Like it's cool that people can build stuff. It's cool that if you have an idea, you can prototype it, you can build it out. But on the security side, it's terrifying, because we were like, well, I just followed a tutorial and I shipped something that is open to the internet and connects to our internal database. That's really scary. And it's a scary moment in time, I think, for security, because it's very hard to secure, it's very challenging, and businesses are in the position of at least feeling like, well, we have to do it this way. Like we have to stay on top of this. We have to be shipping as fast as possible to be competitive. And that's just a tough position to be in as an internal security team.
Yeah, definitely agree. And I think a lot of uh, user awareness and training in the power that they hold now that they can create um, with these tools is um, needed. But then organizations also need to create those technical guardrails um, of the hey, like just in case the user messes up, these technical guardrails will be like our final stop, kind of not like a firewall, but like a barrier. Um, and I feel like organizations are not prepared for that. They haven't assessed their inventory. They haven't assessed where all their data is. They haven't mapped and labeled their data properly. They're still very unprepared for this AI landscape where people can create agents and give their agents autonomy and set them wild in their digital estate.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very it's a very hard problem. Uh, I don't I don't know that. Well, I'm sure no one has solved it because it keeps changing all the time. And I think for security teams, especially for AppSec teams, but I think security teams broadly, if you're used to, well, we have a development team, right? Or we have an IT team, and they're the ones that, you know, push code or, make things available to customers. And then it turns to like, well, no, actually, maybe anybody at the company, right? Because we're used to things like, okay, well, developers need to go through secure code training, for example.
Hmm.
You got to do secure
Yep.
code training. Great. Well, that was focused on developers and building, secure products. And then, yeah, you have some gates like, well, okay, this is how we deploy to production. These are the guardrails that we have. And, this is what our infrastructure looks like. And we've hardened it and we feel really good about it. And then you have folks that are like, well, I just pushed this to Vercel or something. And, you know, now it's out there and it's like, well, we don't even have a relationship with Vercel. Like, what are you doing, right? So it just really increases the attack surface, increases, how many people, like you said, you need to potentially educate on security. And again, I'm not opposed to anyone building anything, but it does make it challenging when you're like, oh, okay, now we need to train the salespeople on like how to deploy code securely. It just it's a big job, and no one solved it, and it's very challenging, very challenging.
It is. And well, like right now, I work at an MSSP that kind of does support for like Copilot, and I've seen like Copilot enablement initiatives where even after like the organization is still unprepared because they haven't done the follow through with the rest of the staff to follow through, that they do the training, that they use the proper environments, that their IT teams are following, that they implement the solutions to graduate them from the dev environment or the test environment to a regular maybe production environment, and following at least those similar code paths that you would use in the SDLC process, but for agentic solutions, um, using an enterprise like solution, whether it be Microsoft or some other um, third party solution where you put a gate around your agents and you try to put a proxy around them and control them. Um, at least put some guardrails around them so you understand who they are, what they're doing, what they're trying to access, and put some governance around them, so guardrails around them. But like you said, it's a hard challenge, and it's one of those areas that if you're interested, there's a lot of room to grow there.
Absolutely. If you that is, the probably the forefront of security right now in terms of um, we don't know how to secure it yet. We don't know what it looks like, and on top of that, it's changing all the time because people are pushing out new tools and they're pushing out new, yeah, like, okay, now we have agents, and now
Mythos.
agents can do this, and now they can do that. Yeah. So yeah, it's really challenging. I think folks have compared it pretty correctly to maybe the shift to cloud, where at first it's like, well, no one knows how to secure this. A lot of the controls are not even built, they don't exist. We don't even know what the controls should be. How should things be accessed? How do we lock it down? And we're very much at that state with AI, and especially with agents. So, if you're looking for a challenge and you're looking to be involved in problems that haven't been solved yet, now's the time. Just got to be brave.
Absolutely. Well, Justin, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your perspectives. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Enjoyed it.